raised his wine glass, smirked across the dinner table, and sneered. Some people just love being needed, even when they're completely not. The entire family went dead silent, staring right at me. He thought he was taking a final humiliating swipe at my place in this family. He thought he could erase years of my quiet sacrifices with a single laugh. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. Instead, I calmly picked up my own glass, took a slow sip, and smiled. "Good news, then," I said softly. "I'm not." Before anyone could speak, I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and tapped the screen exactly 3 times. My mom leaned over, her face losing all color as she whispered, "What did you just do?" My brother laughed, thinking it was a bluff. But exactly 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed, and his smirk completely vanished. My name is Sarah, and at 27 years old, I had spent most of my adult life blending into the background of my own family. Living here in Seattle and working as a corporate accountant, I was always the quiet, reliable one. If a pipe burst at my parents' house, I called the plumber. If the taxes were due, I filed them. But to my family, my usefulness was completely invisible. Instead, the spotlight always belonged to my older brother, Brandon. At 31, Brandon was the golden child who could do no wrong. He was charismatic, loud, and constantly launching what he called revolutionary business ventures. My parents practically worshipped the ground he walked on, celebrating his every minor idea while completely ignoring my steady promotions. But behind their proud smiles lay a secret they completely refused to acknowledge. For the past 4 years, I had been quietly bankrolling their entire lives. While they praised Brandon's business genius, it was my bank account that covered their structural losses, paid their overdue bills, and funded his failing projects out of a deep sense of family duty. I allowed myself to be treated like an afterthought just to keep them afloat. Have you ever been the responsible, underappreciated sibling who quietly carries the entire family on their back while everyone else takes all the credit? If you've ever been in a position like mine, drop a comment below and tell me how you handled it. Because on this particular night, I was finally about to reach my absolute breaking point. The upscale rest. My brother laughed. "Nobody needs you." Then I showed him exactly what I paid for Orant. Downtown was humming with the low chatter of wealthy patrons, a fitting backdrop for yet another celebration dedicated entirely to Brandon. We were gathered to toast his latest business milestone, a flashy partnership that, in reality, I knew was built on a house of cards. Throughout the evening, the pattern repeated itself flawlessly. When I gently tried to share that I had just been promoted to senior financial analyst at my firm, my mom cut me off mid-sentence to ask Brandon if he liked the imported steak. My dad spent 20 minutes lecturing the table on Brandon's unmatched entrepreneurial instinct, while I sat there like an uninvited guest at my own family's table. But the true breaking point came right after the main course was cleared. Emboldened by 3 expensive glasses of scotch, Brandon leaned back in his chair, locked his arrogant eyes onto mine, and delivered a casual, devastating blow. He sneered across the table. "Some people just love being needed, even when they're completely not." The words hung in the air, sharp and cruel. My parents didn't defend me. They just chuckled softly, adjusting their silverware as if my humiliation was just part of the evening's entertainment. In that exact second, a wave of icy clarity washed over me. I looked at my brother's designer suit, my mother's expensive jewelry, and the heavy leather folder containing the restaurant bill. They didn't love me, and they certainly didn't value my quiet sacrifices. They just felt profoundly entitled to my money while treating my existence like an embarrassment. They truly believed they didn't need me. So, right then and there, I decided to give them exactly what they were asking for. I calmly reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened my banking app right there at the dinner table. My thumb hovered over the glowing screen. Seeing the sudden shift in my demeanor, my mom leaned over, her brow furrowing with genuine confusion as she whispered, "What did you just do?" I didn't answer her directly. Instead, I looked up, matched Brandon's arrogant smirk with a calm smile of my own, and began to casually list the cold, hard numbers. "I just took a look at what I actually pay for around here," I said, my voice cutting through the restaurant's ambient noise. "Like the $3,000 monthly mortgage payment on your house, Mom, or the $700 lease on your luxury SUV. And let's not forget the $10,000 business line of credit that keeps Brandon's entire office from being evicted every single month." Brandon opened his mouth to laugh, clearly assuming I was pulling a pathetic bluff to get attention. But I wasn't bluffing. With absolute precision, I tapped the screen exactly 3 times. First, I canceled the automatic mortgage transfers. Second, I unlinked my credit cards from their accounts. Third, I completely revoked Brandon's shared access to my secondary corporate lines. I didn't just set a boundary, I completely severed the invisible financial cords that had been keeping their entire world afloat. I locked my phone, set it face down on the white tablecloth, and watched the countdown begin. Exactly 3 minutes later, the heavy silence at our table was shattered by the sharp, frantic buzzing of Brandon's phone. He scoffed, glancing down at the screen, but his smirk completely vanished when he saw it was his head of operations. He pressed the phone to his ear, his voice laced with his usual irritation. "What is it? I'm at dinner." But as the voice on the other end scrambled to speak, the color drained from Brandon's face so fast I thought he might faint. His business partner was in an absolute panic. The company's primary operational account had just been frozen due to insufficient funds, and the automatic payment for their server hosting had been abruptly rejected. Without that access, their entire digital infrastructure was going dark in a matter of minutes. Brandon's eyes darted to me, filled with a sudden wild terror. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His entire lavish lifestyle, his grand entrepreneurial reputation, and his precious company were all built on a foundation funded entirely by the quiet sister he had spent his life mocking. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice dropping into a desperate, ragged whisper as he slammed his hands onto the table. "Fix it right now, Sarah. You're ruining my business." My dad stood up, shouting at me to stop playing games, while my mom clutched her chest, finally realizing the catastrophic mistake they had made by letting Brandon alienate their real financial savior. For years, they had looked down on me from a tower I had built for them. Now, they were watching that tower crumble in real time, and there was absolutely nothing they could do to stop it. The upscale dinner party completely derailed into an absolute public spectacle. Brandon's face twisted with rage as he launched out of his chair, pointing a trembling finger across the table at me. He loudly accused me of being a bitter, jealous sociopath who was intentionally trying to destroy his life's work just because I couldn't stand to see him succeed. My parents quickly joined in, their voices sharp with panic as they demanded that I log back into my phone and restore his financial access immediately. They were completely desperate, trying to use guilt to force me back into submission. But I didn't flinch. I reached into my purse, pulled out exactly $60 in cash, and tossed it onto the table. "That covers my share of the dinner," I said, my voice entirely calm and steady. Then, I reached back into my bag and pulled out a thick manila folder, dropping it heavily onto the white tablecloth right in front of my parents. Inside were months of printed bank statements, forensic receipts, and unedited corporate ledgers. The documents proved a devastating truth. Brandon's successful company wasn't making a single dime of actual profit. He had been systematically lying to our parents for years, altering the financial data to hide his massive operational losses. He was using my injected capital to pay for his luxury car leases, his expensive designer clothes, and his high-end apartment, all while presenting himself as a self-made genius. I looked directly into my brother's terrified eyes and delivered the final reality check. Since you all firmly believe that nobody needs me around here, you can enjoy managing the $300,000 in hidden operational debt by yourselves. I stood up, slung my purse over my shoulder, and walked away from the table without looking back. The financial domino effect was both swift and completely brutal for my family. Within less than a month, Brandon's house of cards completely collapsed. Without my corporate lines of credit to mask his bleeding balance sheets, his landlords evicted his company, and his business filed for total liquidation. My parents fared no better. Unable to sustain the massive $3,000 monthly mortgage and luxury SUV payments on their own modest retirement income, they were forced to downsize drastically, selling their beloved suburban home at a loss and moving into a cramped, two-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. Meanwhile, my world opened up in ways I had never thought possible. By permanently cutting off the toxic financial parasites who drained me, I suddenly had thousands of dollars of extra income flooding into my own accounts every single month. I used those freed-up resources to finally invest in myself, purchasing a gorgeous, sunlit dream condo overlooking the Seattle waterfront. For the first time in my life, I was coming home to a space that belonged entirely to me, free from the crushing weight of underappreciated sacrifices. Naturally, the desperate phone calls started pouring in after the reality of their new hardship fully set in. My phone constantly buzzed with long, rambling voicemails from my mother, shifting wildly from tearful anger to pathetic begging for just one last loan to help them get back on their feet. Even Brandon tried texting me, claiming he had changed and wanted to start fresh. I listened to them all with absolute calm, and then I firmly deleted every single one of them. Walking away from my family wasn't about being cruel or seeking petty revenge. It was about basic survival. I finally learned that setting firm boundaries isn't selfish. It's completely necessary when dealing with people who mistake your quiet kindness for permanent weakness. I had to stop building towers for people who only use the height to look down on me and make me feel small. Now, I'm deeply curious about all of you who have stayed to listen to my story until the very end. If your own family treated you like an emotional ATM while constantly mocking your actual worth, would you have walked away cleanly like I did? Or would you have given them one last chance? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below. I'm leaving 2 more shocking stories on the screen right now, so make sure to click and watch. Thank you for